How we doing? How we doing? This is Destination Denver, Colorado, and today Denver is in trouble, and it might just be taking Colorado with it. We're going to talk about that in depth, starting right now. All right, this is Destination Denver, Colorado. I am your host, Jim Everett. And there are two things I try to accomplish here. One, we talk all things eating, living, breathing, experiencing the Denver Metro, Colorado Front Range. And second, as a licensed mortgage broker covering the entire state of Colorado and team with some of the state's most talented realtors, well, I'm helping people like you move here each and every day. So the number and email you see on your screen, just know that I am always the person, answer your phone calls, answer your texts, answer your emails, there when and if you need me. Now that we're done with that fun-filled stuff, let's get to what we're here for, and that is Denver is in trouble, and it is taking Colorado with it. So for almost 20 years, Colorado was one of the hottest tickets in the country. People moved here for the jobs, they moved here for sunshine, they moved here for picture-perfect lifestyle, all of the amenities, this great weather, this great balance, and a lot of folks, especially coming from the coast and from the Midwest, were flocking to Colorado. But in 2025, the tide officially shifted. And we've obviously been seeing this for a while, but Colorado hasn't stopped growing, but the pace and the people who are driving that growth have changed pretty dramatically. So overall, the state is still gaining in population, but the inflow has been cut in half, and a growing share of those long-term locals, those natives that take so much pride in the state, are the ones packing up and heading out. So what's really happening in Colorado? And let's understand that we're going to focus a lot of this story on Denver because the Denver metro area is such a huge driver for Colorado. We're going to talk about the state, don't get me wrong, but really looking at where this continuity is coming from. So between 2013 and 2020, Colorado saw roughly 42,000 people come into the state. Their population grow by about 42,000 new residents per year. So since 2020, that number has dropped to just under 6,600 on average over these last handful of years. And again, you're talking net migration overall statewide. That's roughly 36,000 fewer people moving here compared to a decade ago. And that's like 4 full crowds of Red Rocks just deciding, we're not going to come there anymore. And a lot of economists have taken to calling this a success disaster. That's where you become so popular that in many ways we overpriced ourselves and we have to own our own success. The jobs, the lifestyle, the beauty, they're still there, but the affordability that powered our growth isn't there anymore. And so Colorado is no longer this guaranteed landing spot for a lot of these young professionals who were looking for the place to get started. It's no longer the state that imports, a lot of these middle-class families. It's really become a state that imports wealth and it exports middle class. And by all means, cue all the people who are going to say Colorado is becoming California. To some extent, that's an accurate statement. And if you want a real snapshot of this, of who's leaving and who's moving back, let's look at some truck data. So the U-Haul Growth Index ranked Colorado 40th among growth states in 2024 to 2025. That's down from top 10 status for nearly a decade from 2010 to 2020. And again, that means more trucks are heading out of Colorado than in. Atlas Van Lines calls us balanced, and that's just kind of a pretty polite way of saying that your boom is over. And this is not a temporary slowdown, to be very clear. It's the same hollowing out that we saw in California. You're still seeing that, where people who can't afford an area move out, people who can't afford an area move in. So I touched on this last week, but really, where is this outflow occurring? Because it's not every area of the metro, just like it's not every area of Colorado. So as far as the Denver metro, which again drives a ton of the population of the state of Colorado, the hardest hit areas are Denver, Arapahoe County, Boulder counties. These are the same places that led the boom in. Meanwhile, you've got these exterior counties like Douglas, like Weld, that are still showing growth as people flee these unaffordable areas. They're moving to especially Weld County, where there's still some resemblance of affordability. But even there, because of that growth, affordability is fading fast. So many households first move from Denver to the outskirts, and then when the outskirts become too unaffordable, they move out of the state entirely. So statewide, 24 of 64 counties lost population in 2025. 24 out of 64 lost population in 2025. And 35 counties are now seeing more deaths than birth in the state of Colorado. Again, to emphasize, 35 out of 64, more than half of our counties are seeing more deaths than births. And that's a huge sign. That's an early warning sign of labor shrinkage as we move forward. And listen, the real culprit here is housing. And we don't have to dance around this too much. I think it's pretty obvious for most people. And we can't overcomplicate it. The number one reason that people are leaving Denver Metro, and Colorado for that matter, is housing. So as of late 2025, the median home price in Denver sits around $614,000, again roughly. That's about 30% higher than the national average. An example of one of our more popular suburbs, Highlands Ranch to the south of Denver, their median price point hovers around $700,000, and even areas like Fort Collins, which is a little more than an hour north, depending on traffic, north of Denver, their median home price still sits around $540,000, and that used to be a community where, I mean, you just thought affordability as soon as you got there. And a lot of this bigger issue, and this is a nationwide issue, this is not just a Denver issue, is not just that the sticker price is higher, it's the lock-in effect. You've got tens of thousands of homeowners who are sitting on mortgage rates between 2.5% and 3.5%. And with rates now in the mid-sixes, they're not going anywhere, they're not shifting anywhere, so home prices being pretty steady. So what happens? Well, people sell their Colorado home, they take the equity, and they move somewhere where they can pay cash. They move to a Texas, an Arizona, or a Midwest town. And what happens to these homes that do get sold? Do they go to a middle-class family? Do they go to somebody just trying to scrape some money together for down payment assistance? No, they tend to go to people who have more resources, people who have more money. And a lot of those people are moving to Colorado from different parts of the country where that area was even less affordable than Colorado is. And so you do have this situation where inventory has climbed to about 4.5 months of supply. That means if you don't list any more houses, you have about 4.5 months before they're all gone. That's just a real estate term there. And you have the highest level of inventory in more than a decade. Homes are taking roughly 68 days to sell. That is unheard of in the Denver Metro. Again, it's unheard of nationwide for a long time. And this is not a crash for any of you crash folks. We're not seeing price point slump. We're just seeing this big stall. And renting isn't much easier. You got, even with all this new apartment construction downtown, Denver remains, the rent in Denver remains high enough that many young professionals just simply can't get ahead living here. And the cost of living crunch continues to shrink people. So the 2025 Colorado Chamber of Commerce scorecard ranked Colorado as the third most expensive state to live in. That is Colorado's Chamber of Commerce saying this, ranking us the third most expensive. We're 46th in cost of living. We're 48th in housing affordability. We're 5th highest for childcare costs in the nation, averaging nearly $21,000 per year per child. And listen, as the father of a 2-year-old, I can tell you, it's crazy expensive living here, and the daycares don't exactly give you a discount for having more than one. And then we talk about other issues here. Add utilities, insurance hikes. The pressure is enormous. You got wildfire and hail risks. That's driving homeowners insurance premiums crazy. You got, for many families, the math just doesn't work anymore, especially when a similar job in a Kansas City or a Fort Worth offers twice the house for half the price. And so what you see in a lot of areas of Colorado, and certainly Denver, is the disappearing middle. And we talk about this in a lot of these higher priced communities. You've got migration data that shows that people who are leaving are the ones who make communities run. They're the teachers, they're the nurses, they're the police officers, they're the skilled tradespeople. The most common income brackets who are moving out of Colorado and out of Denver make roughly $50,000 to $100,000 a year. They're the drivers of the community. And those who are moving in, those are largely people making $100,000 plus, $200,000 plus. They're remote tech workers, they're high income professionals, they're relocating from coastal markets, and that's changing, again, not just the demographics, it's just changing how Denver is perceived and how affordable or unaffordable it is. And really you're seeing that Denver is becoming, and Colorado is becoming, a barbell economy. You got wealthy on one end, service workers on the other, and there's not a lot of give in between. We used to talk a lot about this in mountain towns where you had these resorts, places like Aspen where you have very wealthy people living, and all the people who need to work within those communities at your stores, at your cafes, they have to live miles and miles outside the town unless they could find some sort of reasonable rent and 5 of them pack into an apartment. That type of lifestyle known to resort towns is now becoming kind of the theme of just being in Denver. And then there's a vibe change. And this is kind of interesting to me because statistically, listen, crime numbers have actually improved. Homicides in Denver are down 58%. Aurora saw 36% earlier this year. Now granted, they were high. So percentages tend to be high when you're either starting really low and you increase, or you're starting really high and you decrease. So percentages can be thrown off. But property crimes are also down double digits. I mean, you've seen this vast improvement, but the perception has not caught up to that reality. People still feel unsafe in a lot of areas downtown. You still have homeless encampments. You still have open drug use. You still have public disorder. And that has made the city still feel worse than the improvements have made it. And I'm a believer that Denver is progressing in a positive direction. I believe that we're moving in the right direction in a lot of areas, to some extent even including affordability. But as far as crime, it's still a huge concern that people have, despite the progress that has been made. And then one of the last key factors here is the work from anywhere, the remote worker. And that was a huge impact during the pandemic. You had a ton of people who moved to Denver and moved to Colorado. They wanted to have the Rocky Mountain lifestyle, and because they could live anywhere, they moved. So about 1 in 5 remote workers surveyed in 2025 said they plan to move this year. And most, again, citing either affordability or a desire for change. And they're taking their Denver salaries and they're spending them in places like Knoxville and Tulsa, which are two of the more popular areas that people have talked about, at least according to the survey. And that's where their money's going to go twice as far. But here's the counter trend, and this is the return to office mandates. That's also throwing things off. So roughly 45,000 federal employees across Colorado have been told to return to in-person work full-time, and a lot of big private companies are doing the same thing. So that keeps some people here, which will be interesting to see how that plays out. But it also recreates traffic, it recreates commute times, it recreates urban costs that drove people out in the first place. So it'll be interesting to see how that mandate to come back to work impacts people. And where are these people going? If they're leaving Colorado, if they're leaving Denver, where are they going? So statistically, Texas remains the #1 destination. And for some pretty easy reasons, I think. There's no state income tax. The median price, for example, in Fort Worth sat at about $323,000 as of making this video. That's about half of what it is in Denver. Families can sell there. They can buy there, they can sell here. They can buy a house out there outright. They can pocket the difference. Huge factor. Arkansas, especially Bentonville, where Walmart, Tyson, JB Hunt are creating a mini Denver in the Ozarks. Very popular there in Bentonville. Especially when you have a median home price $400,000, you got mountain biking, you got craft beer. So if you can simulate some Denver, probably some warmer weather there. Arkansas, huge. Arizona continues to be a popular spot. Phoenix sits around $485,000 for median price. You got a flat 2.5 tax rate. So Arizona, very popular. Midwest cities, even like a Kansas City, St. Louis, where people, if they can take their pay here, spreads a lot farther there. And then of course, Florida will always be on people's radar. You're still drawing a lot of retirees. You're still drawing a lot of equity-rich sellers who are chasing lower taxes and sunshine. So Florida continues to be a popular spot. But I'm telling you, I've dealt with it enough times. Then they move to a Texas, they move to an Arkansas, they move to a Florida. Don't dig it quite as much. Go through one summer with that humidity, and then call me and come back. It'll be all right. So what's the future? What happens to Colorado in the coming years? Because as I said, as negative as this video may sound, there's a lot of positives happening in Denver. A lot of key developments, a lot of changes, a lot of improvements. So here's the challenge Colorado now faces. We built an economy that demands or depends on people moving here, and that engine is sputtering a bit. If the state can't return some level of affordability, we're going to face a long-term labor shortage and slower growth. It's going to happen. The Common Sense Institute, for what it's worth, warns that by 2030, the ratio of workers to retirees will shrink sharply, and that'll create a strain on a lot of social programs and tax revenue. So how do we fix this? There's two key things, in my opinion, that specifically the Denver Metro, but Colorado needs to look at. One, housing reform. You need to loosen zoning and construction defect laws so that we can actually build affordable condos and affordable townhomes for the middle class. You need to make it easier for builders. I'm not saying that they should be able to build unsafe. I'm not saying you should, and listen, at the end of the day, I do home loans for a living. I want people to have a quality house. But the ability for someone to be able to build without half of their budget going to regulation that we know doesn't benefit anybody, the consumer, well, maybe it benefits some state locals. We'll talk about that. But you gotta loosen that. And next, you have to look at some cost reform. You got to address runaway childcare, insurance, utility costs before they drive out families. When somebody has to pay $2,200, $2,300 a month to take care of a child, a mortgage payment to take care of a child, out of control. And Colorado's gonna have to make a choice. Is it gonna be a state where people can move and thrive and grow a family? Or is it a place that they can't afford to live, they can't afford to grow, and the only thing they can do is move somewhere else? So no, listen, as negative as this may have sounded, Colorado is not collapsing. It's certainly not thriving, but it is evolving. We've gone from a boom town to a grown-up economy. And that really comes with some hard truths. It comes with some challenges as we hit this plateau. Now listen, if we can find a way to make this state livable again, if we can make it livable for teachers and nurses and police officers and young families, we can really rebuild the dream that brought everybody here in the first place. The reason that Colorado became such a popular place. If we don't, we'll just keep watching these moving trucks move south. I mean, that at the end of the day is what's going to occur. I am of the belief that Colorado can still be saved. I love some of the things that Denver's doing. I love some of the things that these neighboring suburbs are doing. There's a lot of things to be proud of, a lot of things to be excited about. We just have to be real about the challenges we face as well. But that's what we're here for, to figure out solutions, come up with answers. And listen, if I can ever be a resource for you, don't hesitate. Any questions on this, feel free to reach out at any time. The number and email on your screen, just know that I'm always the person. Answer those phone calls, answer those texts, answer those emails. This is Destination Denver, Colorado. I am your host, Jim Everett. That was Denver is in Trouble, and it's taking Colorado with it. Till I see you next time, peace.